Today we're going to be going through how to build a component library Chrome extension where you can save down bubble elements and then reuse them at a later stage. So you'll see there I clicked on the Chrome extension, it opens up and I already have one component saved down, but let's say I want to save down this group here. It's kind of a hero section and maybe I want to use it again in a future app. I can just copy this. Once I have it copied, I can click on the save component. I can give it a name, save it down, and I can now use this in a future app. And just to show you how it works in reality, if I go into a completely blank app, which I have here, and I want to load in those two components, I can copy the previous one first. We'll paste that in. It's like a testimonial section from another app of mine, and then do the same thing with the hero section that we have just added. So a really nice way to reuse components from one app in the future and save yourself a bunch of time. So we're going to go through that in this video. Before we get into building our Chrome extension, I just want to go through what actually happens under the hood when you copy an element with Bubble. So let's say I want to copy this group here and I want to right click and go to copy. What's actually happening? Well, if you go to your Chrome developer tools, which you can do by right clicking on an area up here, going to inspect and then going over to application, what you're going to see is under local storage here, I might just make this a bit bigger, we have a specific area for bubble.io. And the key field we're looking at here, and these are all things that we've essentially stored locally in Chrome, is this one here, bubble element clipboard. And this effectively represents the element that we've copied to our bubble clipboard. Just to give you a sense of how this might change, so you can see here, this is the JSON associated with this group. But if I was to just click on a text element, and what I'll do is I'll just do Command C for copy, but watch that change slightly. So if I do Command C, you'll see there that changed to text. And again, we've now told Bubble that we want to copy this specific element. So the key to building our component library Chrome extension is we basically want to save down this JSON to our Bubble database. We're then going to put it back in our Chrome storage when we are ready to paste it into a different app. And then just one more tip to make things easy when you're looking at this yourself is you can click on this up here. That's going to get rid of everything. But now when I go to copy something, you'll see the only thing that comes up, well, not the only thing, but a much kind of smaller range of things that come up, and we can see the bubble element clipboard variable much easier. Okay, I have a brand new bubble app here, nothing on it just yet. And the way we're going to build our Chrome extension is by turning this bubble app into a Chrome extension using Charles. And Charles is a way to turn your bubble app into a Chrome extension. It has some source code, which you only need to make some tiny modifications to, and also a plugin, which we'll go through later. So if you go over to buildwithcharles.io, you click on the Get Started for Free button, and you'll see here we have Charles, a bubble Chrome extension builder. We can download the source code for free. So I'm going to put in some details here just to get it. And once we've filled in all those details, we can get access to the Chrome extension builder code. So you'll be brought to this page, and if you click on download, you're essentially going to download a zipped file here. You then need to go to wherever you downloaded that file and unzip it by simply clicking on it. So you'll see here we have a folder that's going to be opened, and if we open that up, you'll see we have a bunch of files here which are basically what's needed to build a Chrome extension. And the good news is it's already built for you. You don't need to worry about it yourself. Now, we're not going to have to do much coding, but we are going to have to change one or two things. So what you're going to need to do is open up this extension source code in some sort of code editor or text editor. So I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code. And this is the code we're going to upload to Chrome. And we're going to point it towards our Bubble app in a second. But just to give you a sense of how this actually works in terms of uploading it, if we go back to Chrome and we click on this icon here, which is used to manage our extensions, if we go to Load Unpacked, and then we go to Downloads, which is where we have that source code, if we click on that, we're going to have our extension uploaded. And now I'm opening the Welcome to Charles page by default. It has some just information on how to use Charles. But once we pin our extension, we can actually access it. So you'll see here we're opening up our Chrome extension, and it's automatically linked to the Charles demo app, which just shows off a bunch of features you can use with it. But we can actually point this to our own bubble app. I'm going to point it to this one here. And just to show what app we're pointing it towards, I'll drop in a text element and I'll call this component library. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the width of the page to 400, just to give it a more kind of realistic width in terms of what the Chrome extension itself is going to be like. And then I'm going to put this in preview mode. I'm going to get rid of the debug at the end of it. And then I'm going to copy this URL. So I'm going to do Command C. And then in my Chrome extension code, I'm going to make a couple of very small changes. The first change I'm going to make is in this popup.js file. And instead of pointing the URL to the default Charles demo app, I'm going to delete all this. And I'm going to paste in that app link that I've just copied. I'm going to go to File, Save. And this is a nice thing about working with Chrome extensions. We don't need to re-upload it here. We can just refresh. And now, when we open up our Chrome extension, which you can't do on the extensions page, just in case you're wondering, we're going to end up with this. So we are pointing it to the right app, but we did forget one key step, and that was enabling iframes. So if we go to Settings, if we go to General, you'll see here we have the option to render the app in a frame or an iframe, and we're going to allow all frames. And now, hopefully, when we open up our Chrome extension, you can see we have it pointed to our bubble app. Now, we're going to be building a component library. We need a bit more space than I think the standard pop-up allows. And I actually kind of like the bubble component library behavior, where when you click on their component library, you get this kind of slow sliding sidebar. And I'm going to recreate that, which is really easy to do, thankfully, with the Charles framework. What you need to do is back in your extension source code. If you go to background.js, I'm not going to go through all the instructions here, but basically you can decide to show your bubble app in either a sidebar, a floating modal, or a full screen modal. And I think sidebar is going to be the best for our use case today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncomment these 4 lines. And by uncomment, I simply mean deleting the forward slashes there. And again, I'm going to change the URL that's associated here. So instead of pointing to the demo app, I'm going to point to our new one. I'm going to go to File. I'm going to go to Save. And then this is important. Back in our manifest file, we need to delete under Actions. We need to delete the default pop-up because we're no longer using a pop-up. So you simply need to delete this line of code here. And importantly, don't leave a space. We go to File, Save. We'll go back to our Extensions tab. We'll refresh it. And now, when I open up our extension, you see we get this nice sidebar, which I think is going to be much more useful for us building out our component library. Okay, so we now have our kind of basic, frame of a component library Chrome extension. And the next thing I want to do is actually work on our database structure. This is the app that we're going to be using to kind of copy and paste in the various components. And there are 2 key things we need to save down for each component. I'm going to create a new data type called component. I'm then going to add 2 fields, like I said. So the first one is going to be name, which is going to be something to represent the component. And then the second one is going to be the JSON associated with it. And I'm going to have that as type text as well. Now, we've already downloaded and uploaded our source code for the Chrome extension, but in order to let it interact with the kind of elements on the page itself, we're going to need to install the Charles plugin. So if you go to the plugins tab of your Bubble editor and you search for Charles, the Chrome extension builder, you're going to be able to add that in there. And once you've added it, you're going to have access to a bunch of different components. So you'll see here we have all these elements down here, I should say, and each of these do different things. And for our purposes today, I'm just going to drop 2 on our app. The first is going to be Charles Chrome Storage. I'm going to make that last. And the second one is going to be Charles Selected Text. Again, just make that last. And we can change these to one if we want, just so they don't take up too much room. But once we have these on the page, we're going to have access to a couple of different actions. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a button here, and I'm going to say save component. And every time this is clicked, what we're going to do is we are going to, first of all, go down to plugins. We're going to go to Charles, and we're going to search to read from Chrome storage. It's actually not in there. Yeah, here we go. Charles, read from local storage. So what are we doing here? We're basically taking, if we go back maybe to our Chrome developer tools here, if we go to inspect, go into application, what we basically want to do is we want to get this bubble element clipboard value here, and we're going to define that here as the variable name. So I'm going to type in bubble element clipboard, and then context. This is essentially, where the value is being read from. And in our case, we're going to want to take it from the active tab. So that's how we read from the local storage. What I might do is just to highlight what's actually happening here is I'm going to put two text elements in our extension as well. Let's put a bit of spacing in between things. Make this a bit higher up. Same for that. Okay, so I'm going to say name, and we're going to go to Charles Chrome Storage A's variable name. And I'm going to go to value, and then Charles Chrome Storage variable value. Okay, and then if we were to refresh our bubble app here, this is a separate app just so you're aware. But if we were to refresh this, and then if we open up our extension, and let's say we want to copy this button, we're going to go to copy, and then I'm going to go to save component, and you can see here we're getting the bubble element clipboard, and this is effectively the JSON that's representing the actual button element. So the next thing we want to do is we want to actually save this down to our bubble database. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to, like you might think, just kind of create a new thing here, or at least not immediately, because I have found it takes a second just for the JSON to register, and sometimes you get blank values. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an event that comes with the plugin, and that's Chrome Store's local variable is red. I'm going to create a new thing. New thing is going to be component, and the JSON is going to be equals to this Charles Chrome Storage variable value. So hopefully now, if we go back here and we refresh, let's just copy the text element. So copy, and then we're going to save component. We have that there again, but if we look at our database this time, you should see we have that saved down. But we probably want some way to identify these components rather than just, the JSON, because that's not particularly meaningful. So what I suggest doing is you go to your app where you're building out your component library, and you add something like a pop-up, and we can say, I want to make sure this is the right size. Yeah, 400 should be okay. But we want to say something like get an input, and this is going to be the name effectively of the component we're saving down. Put in some space here. I'm not going to focus too much on the kind of UI at the moment, but just to do some very basic things. And we might also, yep, that's fine. So that's going to be the name. So what we're going to do is when this is clicked, rather than doing that, we're actually just going to go to open a pop-up or show an element. Should know that at this stage, you would have thought. Show a pop-up, and then I'm going to get rid of this, or I'm going to cut it, And then when they actually click on the Save Component button in the pop-up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new thing then. The thing is going to be a component. The JSON is going to be equals to Chrome storage's variables value, and the name is going to be equal to the input A's value. You might remember I was previously creating it here because I said, oh, sometimes it doesn't automatically go and there's a bit of a lag, you get blank entries. The reason I'm comfortable doing in this case is there's obviously going to be a bit of time between when the user opens the pop-up, they put in the name and then they save it. So I'm happy enough to do it that way. So we're creating a new component, we'll reset the relevant inputs, and we will hide an element, which is going to be the pop-up. So let's try this again. Okay, let's grab this group here, copy that, save components, and we're going to call this section header, save component, and we're not getting anything displayed there. So let's just take a quick look at our database, and that didn't seem to go through. So what's going on there? Let me just have a quick look. Save components, create a new component. And of course, the reason is we forgot something very important, which is when we are initially having the user click the Save Component button, we want to first of all do our read from local storage with Charles. So I'll go back and we're going to say bubble element clipboard. And again, we're going to read this from the active tab. And if we go back to our application here, and if we open up our extension, let's copy this kind of steps section here. So right click, copy, save component. You can see it's already popping up in the background, but let's call this steps. Save that down. We didn't hide the pop-up, but if we go to our database, what we should see is under app data, we have one entry with a name and with the JSON. So that's good. Maybe just a bit of tidying up. We can say when save component is clicked, we're then going to hide an element, which is going to be the pop-up. And then on our app itself, I'm just going to get rid of this, and I'm going to put in a repeating group. In fact, I might just fast forward through this. That is looking pretty good, I think, or at least good enough for our purposes at the moment. Essentially saving down each of the components to our database and then showing them in a repeating group. So if I go back to my application and we refresh the Chrome extension app, you'll see here we now have our steps component saved down. Let's say we want to save down our section here. We go to save and let's call this one features. Save that. We now have features, and let's save down one more, which is testimonials. Great. So we now have all these saved down, and what we want to do now is figure out a way to take these components that we've saved down and add them to another application. So I'm just going to open up another app very quickly here in the background. Okay, so I have another app opened up here. Really simple app just on creating certificates, but let's say I want to add some of these components that I've saved down to this new app that I've opened up. What I can do is I can basically add some logic so that when one of these repeating group entries is clicked, we're then going to write the JSON associated with each entry down to our storage, and then we can basically paste it in as if it had been copied. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our app here. I'm just going to add it in an icon. Put that in here. Change this to be a row just to make it look slightly better, even though again, not focusing too much on the UI for today, but we'll make that last. We'll space things out. And we're going to change this to the copy icon, which we have here. And I'm going to say when this is clicked, what we're going to do is we're going to write to local storage a Charles Chrome storage. So again, this is an action that comes with the plugin. And again, the variable name we are going to write to is that bubble element clipboard one, all lowercase, and two i's. And really key again, just in case you don't remember how to get that, Chrome DevTools, go to Application, and this is the one you want here, Bubble Element Clipboard. Okay, so we will exit that for now, and the value associated with that variable that we're writing is going to be parent groups component JSON. So again, we're taking the JSON associated here and we're writing it to our Chrome storage. We're going to write it to the active tab. Okay, I think we're pretty much there. So let's see if this works. Let's refresh our application. We now have these three components here. I'm going to copy the steps one first. And now if I go down here and I go to paste, we're getting our steps coming in here. You can see it's not exactly perfectly like it was on the actual landing page. And the reason for that is it doesn't have some of the plugins installed that you need. But you can see the general kind of look of it is there. Maybe a bad example. Let's go back and say then something a bit more simple. Yeah, okay, even the spacing and stuff is a bit off there. But let's just take some basic text elements and use that. I think actually our testimonials one should be pretty good. Let's try that. We go here and go to testimonials, click here, paste it down. Yeah, you can see we have all those testimonials that we had. Kind of annoying thing here is I haven't added a close icon, which you do need to do when you are dealing with the sidebar. Just going to make this first, change that to close, add a workflow, and we're going to go to Charles close extension pop-up modal, and let's try it one more time. And close that. Okay, and you can see there that's looking pretty similar to what we have down here. And let's just do a couple of more. Let's copy this section here. So we're going to go to Command C or just copy it. Click on our extension, save it. I'm going to call it case studies. Save it down. And we will also do this group card here. Copy that. Save component card. Save that down. And now in our application here, it's going to make this layout a bit bigger so we can see everything. If we go down here, let's say we want to pull in the case studies. You can see we have them coming in really nicely. One thing to note is if you are copying in something that's using like, the primary style, that will change as you come across depending on what style. Then let's say we want to add in the card, copy that, paste that in. And you can see it's taking up the full width there just because it's not actually in like a master group, but I think you get the idea of how it works. I mean, if we change that to fit that and that, we're getting it much nicer. So yeah, that's how you build a component library Chrome extension with Bubble and Charles. You could obviously do a ton of things to make this look a bit nicer. I'm only just going for the basic functionality here. You could also, if you want to create your own component library that you could then offer as a service, you could get images for each particular component and have that as a kind of preview on this page. You could group into categories. There's so many ways you can go with that, but that is the idea behind building a component library. Hope this has been useful. If you do have any questions, you can let us know in the comments below.